Here's Dr. Scott Schachter from the Ocular Surface Academy with your industry spotlight.
So Glen, it's great to see you, Glen Curran of Allergan. Couple things. I picked up on your accent. I think it's Australian, and which is appropriate. We've got a lot of Australians as part of the podcast. But tell me, we've met a few times, but tell me a little bit more about your background and what you're currently doing at Allergan.
Scott, you're right. It comes through fairly strongly, even more strongly after a few drinks at the end of a night. But obviously, that's not going to happen today on the podcast with you. But look, my current role at Allergan in our Eyecare US organization is looking after our anterior segment business from a marketing point of view. So, what does that mean? It means I've got responsibility for our refresh portfolio, as well as the consumer portfolio, which is beyond refresh, into Restasis, the product that just keeps giving, and also our new presbyopia platform, which is an innovation as well as an area that we're really looking forward to getting more and more into as the year goes on.
Very good. And tell me how you came to be in this current position, and what is your current position exactly at Allergan?
Yeah, so in terms of getting to Allergan and where I am, I've sort of started in Australia, as we mentioned earlier on, and I started my career as a representative carrying the bag for a number of years, and then working my way through different roles in marketing and sales management. I always had a desire to work overseas, and at that time I had an opportunity to join Allergan, actually not in Australia, but over in the UK. And so I went across to the UK and worked in what was then our Europe, Middle East, and Africa division, and started in the area of medical aesthetics. Worked in our medical aesthetics division for a number of years, and then was told that with our heritage of eye care, and that was really where Allergan's foundation was, and that if I wanted to progress, that I really needed to understand the eye care business. And so I shifted across into eye care and looked after our marketing teams and our marketing for all of Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And at that time, launched a number of our products, such as Ozurdex, Optive, Refresh over in Europe, as well as our Lumigan 01 and Gamfor programs. Subsequent to that, I went back to Australia and actually ran Australia, New Zealand across all of Allergan for all of our portfolios. So not just eye care, but our medical aesthetics division, as well as our specialty therapeutic division. And that time we also had a GI division. Did that for 5-6 years, went back to Europe and was running what we called Other Europe, which was 35 medium to small markets across all of Europe. So if you take out the big five of UK, Spain, Italy, and France and Germany, I had everything else. And so that was a fantastic opportunity to really get to understand a lot of different cultures, a lot of different business setups, all within our Allergan portfolio. But one thing I'd never done was work in the US, and it's one thing that always I wanted to do. The pharmaceutical industry in the US is exceptionally strong. From a sales point of view, it accounts for 55-60% of the global pharmaceutical industry. But more importantly, it's the innovation. The innovation is really seen and delivered from the US. It really is the epicenter, and I wanted to come across here and really work within that environment. And at the end of 2019, I should say, I got that opportunity to run the anterior segment, and here I am, almost just over 18 months into it.
Wow. Well, already a storied and global career. And, having grown up in Southern California, Santa Ana, Anaheim, Newport Beach, I spent my I'm from there and was always a fan of what Allergan was doing. Went to SCCO in Fullerton. We had tight connections with Allergan. So it's a great company to be part of. So let's talk about 2020, formerly known as the year of vision. A lot changed in 2020, not only because of the pandemic, but Allergan changed as well. Can you enlighten us on that?
Look, it was quite a year, 2020, and in so many ways. I think really understating it to say that. But from a company point of view, not only were we dealing with the pandemic, but we also had a merger going on. And I've been part of a few mergers in the past, but never done a merger virtually. I've got to say that we're being able to go through that since May, when then the merger was announced, to now, which was almost coming on for 12 months. It has gone exceptionally smoothly, and I've got to say that now as we form the new Abbvie organisation, and it is very pleasing to be part of what is one of the world's leading pharmaceutical companies. From a sales point of view, we delivered around $48 billion in 2020, which is quite incredible. But it's not necessarily the sales number that I think matters as much as, as we've started to understand the new organisation and listen to the culture, listen to what really drives Abbvie. What really stands out is three things to me, and that's really the focus on science, which really, is music to my ears in terms of what we want to do and what we want to deliver when it comes to innovation. I think it's the patient and our support for our HCPs or our ECPs for our Eyecare business. And lastly, our employees. So I think that those three things really come very strongly. And I think that when you meet anyone from Abbvie, and now with our new organisation, to have those three things at the centre of what we do and why we are here and why we exist and do what we do, it is really pleasing. But the other thing that I would say is that we've also got a team of executives that really understand what it is also to have heritage. And I think that what really signifies that is that our Allergan name has continued. We will be Allergan, an Abbvie company, but that decision was made in recognition, really, of the heritage that our company has. As you said, Scott, you've been in Southern California all your life, and we do have such a good connection with the community here. But more broadly, when we think about eye care, when we think about Botox therapeutics business, and of course our medical aesthetics franchises, the organisation has smartly decided to keep that heritage and keep that name of Allergan, which, as I said, will now be Allergan and Abbvie company.
Excellent. So in terms of Allergan Eyecare, what specific impact will the merger have on Allergan Eyecare, and what's the combined company's vision for the future? And are there any areas that the company would look to invest safe for the long term?
Good question. And I think, look, we're committed now more than ever to the eye care community. We continue to be, really focused on bringing innovations and new treatments to patients. Like we've been committed for the last 70 years, nothing's really changed, and it's not going to change in light of the merger. Considering from a product point of view, we've got the likes of Restasis and, of course, the Refresh lines, and we want to continue to innovate here. And, for example, last year, we launched 3 new products in the Refresh area. Of course, Refresh Digital, Refresh preservative-free, digital preservative-free, I should say, and our unit dose version of Refresh Reliever PF. And so, we know that there are so many areas of high unmet need, and particularly even in dry eye, there's still an immense unmet need when we think about the 35 million patients who have the condition, and only 1.4 million prescriptions are actually written for therapeutic dry eye disease. There are really a lot of opportunities for us as part of the new Abbvie to really unlock the resources of this larger organisation to focus in on what we can do in the eye care area. And whether that's in our pipeline or whether that's through business development, we're focused on mentioned dry eye and what the opportunities are there. But of course, in retinal disease, or in glaucoma, or in other really areas of unmet need, we are really focusing in on what we can do and what those opportunities look like. And one thing that's really pleased us really over the last year is while Abbvie has 4 pillars of their focus, being in hematology, oncology, immunology, neuroscience, and of course medical aesthetics with the merge, the executive leadership have really started to understand, as we've come together in the last 12 months, the value that we have in the eye care business. And in fact, I think just as recently as last week, when Rick Gonzalez, our CEO, was on the quarterly call, really mentioned eye care and how it fits in with the Abbvie philosophy in such a specialized area, and that our aim as an Eyecare leadership group working with the executive in Abbvie will be to try and make Eyecare the fifth pillar of Abbvie success and cornerstone as we move into the future.
Well, that's great news. And you mentioned unmet needs, and that's something that I've been tuned into quite a bit of late. Unmet needs really around the world. TFOS put out a report from Europe looking country by country at unmet needs. And when you talk about unmet needs, that translates into my thinking right away. Well, let's talk about what products are coming, and even more exciting, what's in the pipeline.
The future's bright for patients and for Allergan Eyecare when we start thinking about our pipeline. I mentioned the three products we launched in our refresh area and portfolio just last year, and also exceptionally pleasing to see that we were able to launch Durista, the first ever biodegradable implant for the treatment of glaucoma, and that truly was a real innovative product in itself, and when we're still in the midst of launching that and enabling the benefit of that product to really get to more and more patients. We think about the immediate term. Again, just last week on February 22nd, we submitted an NDA for our investigational eye drop for presbyopia. And again, this is exceptionally exciting when we think that approximately 128 million people in the US experience presbyopia, which is a common and progressive eye condition that reduces the eye's ability to focus on near objects and usually impacts patients after the age of 40. And for many, this is the first significant loss of function due to aging, and can be really frustrating for patients because it's not just the loss of the ability to see up close, but it's the fact that it just does impact their lives day in, day out. And in a recent survey we did, we found that 96% of participants stated that presbyopia did affect their daily lives in at least one moment every day. So although there are several treatment options, there's no perfect solution. So if approved, this will be the first ever FDA-approved eye drop to treat presbyopia. This will be based on our phase 3, Gemini 1 and Gemini 2 clinical studies, which did show that we had significant gains in near vision without the loss of distance vision, which of course is very important because we don't want to improve near vision, but then counterbalance a negative elsewhere. And so we're able to do that with no serious adverse events. So it's something that when we look at 2021 and into 2022, we're really excited to be able to bring this innovation and such a novel technology to you and your colleagues so that you can offer another option for your presbyopic patients in the future.
Excellent. You mentioned Durista, and I heard about that several years ago. I'm glad to see it come to fruition. Really, in my mind, and I'm sure yours and other doctors as well, handles two concerns with glaucoma treatment. First off, we're ocular surface sparing by not requiring eye drops or reduced need for eye drops. And secondly, removing the burden of compliance. Compliance is notoriously poor with glaucoma, and it's such a win-win. I'm excited for you and your company and our patients that we can now start to offer this solution. Very exciting news. Okay. So looking, and you mentioned presbyopia as well. I think about, I had LASIK myself several years ago, so it eliminated my need for glasses and contacts. And now I'm at the point where the reading vision is starting to be, it's beyond starting to be, it's an issue. And so being able to offer these patients this continued reduced dependence on eyewear, contacts, glasses, et cetera, new solutions for these unmet needs, it's all great news. And congrats on looking like you're going to be first to market potentially. So when you look back at 2020, Glenn, from your perspective, what trends really emerged that matter most to the industry? And from that, what do you think is here to stay? Some things are going to be, as we get back to whatever is normal, and what do you think is going to stick around?
Yeah, look, it's interesting when we talk about trends, and the first trend when I think about 2020 that comes to mind is from a patient perspective, which really was just fear. And the barriers related to driving patients to see their eye care providers were nearly insurmountable in 2020. The fear of leaving the house, let alone going to see a doctor, and all the office closures meant that patients just weren't seeking treatment. And as we've come into 2021, it's getting better, but it's still not where it was really pre-pandemic when we think of January and February last year. So what we see we have to do is continue to work with the eye care community to really help drive patients back into the clinics. And when it comes to not only dry eye but all of the eye care conditions, to make sure that patients are back to getting good ocular health from eye care professionals. So that's something that we're very focused on doing, but was definitely a trend that has continued into the earlier part of this year. I think from a customer perspective, the limited live interactions. So, look at us here today, when we're doing this via Zoom, when we may have been meeting in the past face to face, but, we feel it. No conferences, no medical congresses, no live ad boards, executive meetings, etc. So, and we've struggled during that time to really, what we held ourselves as being one of our differentiators as the Allergan, the high touch, so to speak of. And we feel that was what really used to set us apart, is that touch. And whether that was from our executives to myself to all of our team who really enjoyed that customer interaction. But of course, through necessity came innovation, and we've quickly really pivoted and enhanced our virtual engagements with customers and done that, as you can see here today. And I think this also includes our reps. And whilst I think that our physical engagements will get back, and I'm definitely looking forward to interacting with you and many of your colleagues as we get into physical, fingers crossed, physical meetings again as we get into 2021. But I think that what we learned from the pandemic of how to really utilize digital technologies is something that will also stay. I remember people didn't like turning on their cameras, but of course now we're getting used to that, because that of course gives us some way to see and react to people's emotions. Another, I think, interesting trend that I think was enhanced through COVID, but is definitely here to stay is that about screen time. And, screen time was already going up pre-COVID, but COVID just completely accelerated it. And now when we have a look at the stats, our screen time per day is up to about 16 hours, which is just incredible. And that's, of course, not just your screen time on your phone, but it's your screen time sitting in front of your computer, on your tablet, getting home and watching TV, of course, on Netflix or whatever of the streaming you may choose. So that's really could be here in the long term as well. I don't see screens disappearing just because we're going to get out of the pandemic. And of course, while we're still in the pandemic, masks and wearing masks has really been an issue. As you can see, I wear glasses and I have my mask right next to me here. And as soon as I leave my office, even within the building here, I've got to put my mask back on. And of course, all the air coming up over my eyes means that I'm getting a lot more dry eye. And I think mask wearing is going to be around for at least the short to medium term. And that is, of course, another trend that I'm seeing. And now I have my Refresh Digital, which we talked about earlier on. But it is something that we've got to keep out for, is an increase of dry eye, and that may be in younger patients as we start to see them coming through as they're coming into your clinics as we get out of COVID.
Yeah, it's certainly new in my practice to have younger kids, 9, 10, 11 years old, asking their parents to bring them in because their eyes are bothering them. That's a staggering statistic, 16 hours a day of screen time. That's essentially every waking hour, unfortunately. So locally, we've got some kids going back to school pretty soon. I think parents, teachers, and students are all happy that that's happening. Hopefully it goes well. So you mentioned earlier about community. Talk to me a little bit about what Allergan does to support the community.
Probably two things here, just guys. One, From a COVID point of view, I'm really proud to say that as an organisation, we stepped up really quickly. We donated from Abbvie over $35 million for COVID-19 relief and support to healthcare systems, patients and communities. And then additionally to that, the Allergan Foundation included another $2 million dedicated to more than 70 organisations who are responding much more on a local level and a local impact. And so I think it was just really pleasing to be part of an organisation who really stepped up and did our part in what we could when that pandemic hit. But when it's further to that, when I start to think about more the dry eye community and the ECP community, we continue to be focused on what we can do for dry eye disease and particularly around education. As it relates to Restasis, of course, it's been now 17 years since we have been approved, and it was, of course, the only product on the market for 13 years. And when I think about what evolved during that time and more recently, and as you're well aware, the efforts around TFOS and JUICE 2 and what we've been doing that, and there continues to be there's significant unmet need in the communities we touched on before. So that gap between the prevalence and those that have ever got it to having an RX prescription for therapeutic dry eye means that there is still a lot of patients that are suffering and dealing with symptoms that could potentially benefit from a therapeutic drop. And this means that we still have a lot of work to do to help educate the community on the appropriate way to find, diagnose, and treat these patients. And I think you mentioned it in your first episode when you're talking about the history of TFOS with Dr. Sullivan, and Dr. Sullivan talked about the update of TFOS JUICE 2 and how it breaks down the diagnostic methodology. Now, we know that many ECPs do struggle to appropriately screen and diagnose patients, and this is still a big area where Allergan, I think, can help by unbranded peer-to-peer education, leveraging the consensus guidelines and management of dry eye disease. And I think Dr. Sullivan mentioned and credited Allergan that over the past 17 years, we've done an immense amount of work to bring awareness of dry eye disease as a true condition to the forefront. And we truly believe that there's still a lot of work to do. So you won't see us stopping short when it comes to community support, particularly around dry eye and what we can do. And so right now, in terms of educations, we do a lot of activities to educate ECPs, educate the technicians, educate the staff, and our reps are really out there every day sharing data on Restasis and as well as Refresh and all the information on what we can do to better support our patients, including patient support programs. And looking at that, we've really enhanced what we can do from a virtual access to office and patient materials through AllerganEyecare.com, as well as bringing resources directly shipped to your offices. During the pandemic, when our representatives couldn't get out to offices, we had to think of innovative ways to overcome that because we still wanted to drive that support. So we did that, and we've made that still a part of our business now in terms of ensuring that we can support in every which way. And of course, one of the most important things is access, and that's critical in our thinking when we think about the patients, and we want to really enable that access to Restasis. And we're very proud to say that over 90% of both commercial and Medicare Part D patients have access and coverage at some level to Restasis. And of course, we also have for eligible commercial patients a $0 copay program, which we used to be $5. We've now extended that it's just $0 constantly throughout the year. And so we've got that as well as CRM reminders just to help patients remember to take their products, because that education and adherence is just so important to effective treatment.
Well, access is everything. As a private practitioner, we appreciate your continued efforts to make available your products to our patients. And on that note, how has Allergan pivoted to meet the resource needs of patients and eye care professionals during COVID-19?
Yeah, I think some of those ones we touched upon there in terms of the copay savings cards and the offerings that we have, as well as the resources. There definitely been some of the areas that we did initially, and we'll continue to see how we can enhance as we move into the future. We've also started to look at new technologies. This has really pushed us to think about different ways to communicate, which is really good when we think about it from a learning environment. So we now have ECP text capabilities for our team in the field so that they can be reactive and responding to the ECP needs and really providing answers and support to both the provider and staff questions really at our team's fingertips. We're also looking at how we expand the ways in which we do peer-to-peer education and using platforms like Facebook Live events. So hopefully that we can start to trial in the not too distant future. And also when it comes to our own websites, we know that probably the key to not only that awareness we talked about earlier on in the program, it's about making sure that there's a call to action for the patient and that access to good information as well as qualified ECPs is at their fingertips. And so we've enhanced our Find a Doctor tool on our website to ensure that patients can really find doctors near them.
All great news. Really a big fan of Allergan. I hope they continue to be strong with Eyecare. It sounds like they will, in no small part due to your efforts. Anything else you'd like to add, Glenn?
Yeah, I think, look, as we continue to go into 2021, we're going to continue to see how we can support, how we can innovate, not just in our products, but innovate in our communications. We're very clear on our focus and our need to educate the patients and be part of the solution in terms of getting that awareness out there. And hopefully in the not too distant future, you will see some more exciting engagement that we have in this area, as well as what we can do with influencers. The social and digital area is just growing and growing, and you can either ignore it or you can really embrace it and see how we can utilize that to enhance. And so we're looking at what can we do with macro and micro and nano influencers to really utilize their power to ultimately drive awareness to patients and get them to take action to go and see an ECP. And then finally, as we mentioned, we want to continue to enhance our peer-to-peer programs and our education, knowing that as we go from a fully virtual world to a hybrid world to what may be by the end of the year a physical world, that we want to work with the individual eye care practitioners, their offices, and make sure that we're just taking into consideration the safety concerns, how people want education to be delivered, and really enabling that in whatever best format that's going to be. So I think looking forward to working with yourself, working with your peers in 2021 as we come out of the COVID pandemic, hopefully bigger, better than ever, and ensure that in dry eye and all of our eye care conditions that we can bring solutions that can really enhance the patient's lives.
Excellent. In these trying times, still some good news and a lot of reason for optimism. So congrats and continued success to you.
Yeah, no, thanks, Scott. I really appreciate your time and what you're doing here with the program. So thank you.
Thanks very much, Glenn.
This has been your Industry Spotlight with Dr. Scott Schechter. Thanks for listening. You can find us online at www.ocularsurfaceacademy.com, all major podcast platforms, and YouTube.